So, how can creativity help us? Over this next hour, I'm going to be speaking to the founder of the Art of Grieving Festival, which is a new 3-month exhibit in Hertfordshire, exploring death and loss through art. More than 50 artists have taken part with paintings, photos, short films, songs, all working through grief and aiming to break taboos. And we'll be joined by 3 of those artists too. But as always, I would love this to be a conversation, not just between myself and my guests, but between you and us as well. Because if you have encountered loss, felt grief, have you found a creative outlet to help you deal with that? If so, I would love to know what that creative outlet was, how you've turned that pain into something that has blossomed within you and then expressed itself in whatever artistic format you chose. 08085 909 693 is the phone number and the WhatsApp number. Text us on 85058. I'd very much like you to be part of our conversation. Now, Kate Ray is founder and trustee for Rennie Grove Hospice Care's Bereavement Advisory Group and joins us now. Good afternoon, Kate.
Hi there, Nihal. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you too. Firstly, thank you for kind of reaching out to me on Instagram. I believe it was you, and then being persistent. There's a lot going on in my life, and I did want to do this, but you learnt very early on. Just be persistent with him, and you'll get it.
Absolutely. Well, I first contacted you in 2019 before the second Art of Grieving exhibition. But that time I only contacted you a couple of weeks before, and you were keen then, and I spoke with one of your producers at that time, but it just couldn't happen. So this time, as soon as I knew that we were going to be doing this bigger exhibition in 2022, I contacted you before Christmas, and straight away you said, yeah, I want to do this, but you're right, I did have to be persistent.
So my apologies for that. Okay, tell us about this then. How did this idea come about?
Okay, so originally I was a volunteer and a trustee for a small St Albans charity called Bereavement Matters. And as a trustee, I wanted to find a new forum for reaching out and supporting people who are going through any type of loss or bereavement. And I wanted the forum to be something different to what we were already doing. And mainly we were offering counselling and talking therapies. And I felt that art was a really good way to connect with people and draw people in through their own creativity, but also allow for conversations and communication with those that came to view the exhibition. So in a sense, it was twofold. We were offering support to artists who wished to share their work, some of whom had created work years before, and like your poet was just saying, hadn't ever thought they would necessarily share it with an audience. Others created work specifically for the exhibition, but all of them were connected by a wish to be part of a community, and a community that supported everyone through loss and grief and death, an area of life which is obviously often taboo.
How do you connect someone's pain to creativity, especially when so many people, for many reasons, sometimes just a lack of confidence, have never felt they could be creative before?
That's a really good question. And the myriad of different exhibits that we've had over the 3 exhibitions is really a testament to the answer to that question, in that there is no one way. Some of these people are professional artists whose life has been touched by a terrible loss or a terrible death, and they have then created work that's been different to their other work because they've been so affected by that loss. Other people have just felt drawn to the the therapeutic aspect of creation. So they haven't necessarily felt that what they, because some of our exhibits are textiles, for example. So the creation of a piece of patchwork or sewing someone's name or images that they loved into a piece of fabric is in itself therapeutic. I mean, one lady this year, for example, she had never been artistic. Her brother had sadly taken his own life a couple of years earlier. She was struggling with her grief, and she wrote in her email to me, you won't want this piece of art. It won't be what you're looking for, but I just wanted to send you a photo and tell you about it. This painting is called Bro, and it's about my brother. My daughter was doing a piece of artwork for school, and I just suddenly felt that I wanted to paint something to try and get some of my upset out of me. And the painting started off really dark and lots of black, and then it changed, and I took time to create it, and it's now been on my wall for, I think it's 3 years. And I've just seen the publicity about your exhibition, and I'd love it to be part of it. And so of course I said yes. So this is, and when I wrote and said yes, you know, your submission's been accepted, she wrote back and said, my brother would be laughing his head off. He would absolutely love this. And that's just one story of 50, Nihal. You know, there are so many different stories that I could tell you about the sharing of these people's personal and amazing work. You know, it's going to be an amazing exhibition.
How does it help them deal with that pain? What happens through being creative?
Well, I think that's something that you probably need to ask the three artists going to be taking part in this discussion as well. I wouldn't count myself as an artist, but I do like to be creative. And I would say for myself that sometimes, in a way, what you create is honouring someone that you want to remember. So you're creating something in their memory, and you make it beautiful and you make it personal to them, and you remember the little details about their relationship with you and how you felt about them. But in other ways, as I was just saying about textile work, I think actually the act of making a piece of work itself can be therapeutic. You know, the act of painting onto a board, or creating a piece of glasswork, or making a sculpture itself can be therapeutic. So I think there are many layers to the therapeutic offerings of art and of an art exhibition, because obviously, like we're talking now about this exhibition, I think the artists that take part will enjoy meeting, well, I know they have in previous exhibitions, enjoy meeting each other and sharing their stories and looking at each other's work, but also the audience come. And we have some people who come because it's an art exhibition and then find themselves touched by the stories, touched by the work. And then perhaps, as happened in a previous exhibition, coming and saying, you know, I don't feel that I've really dealt with a loss that I've suffered, and I think I might sign up for an Art of Grieving workshop, or I might be someone who might find it helpful to have somebody to talk to in a talking therapy. So it's multi-layered, the ways that it can help.
Well, let's speak to Grace Gallagher now, who is co-artistic director at the Ugly Bucket Theatre. Grace, good afternoon.
Hello, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Tell us about this show, Good Grief.
Yes, so back in about 2019, I graduated uni in 2017 in Liverpool, and a good friend and a comedy lecturer who had taught me and other people in the company while we were on the course had a terminal cancer diagnosis, and kind of one of the last things he asked us to do before he died was if we'd be willing to create kind of like a short 10-minute comedy clowning show about death to be performed at his memorial service, which was like, even when we were asking him, like, what do you want it to be like? Like, what are the details? And he was very much like, well, I'm not going to see it. Like, do whatever you want. I want you guys to make what you want to make. And we created kind of a short version where we basically kind of interviewed him in like our last meeting, and we used the recording of his voice to kind of inspire this short comedy clowning piece. But it was almost like a snowball, and it spiraled, and we found that we kind of had opened up a massive can of worms, and there was so much more to talk about, and we wanted to reach out to so many more people that it's developed over the past few years into a full hour-length show. And basically we interviewed people from all over, and we worked with Care Merseyside and Dramatic Recovery in Liverpool, and we talked to loads of different people about all their experiences of grief and bereavement. And basically what we do is we kind of take these recordings and we will turn them into techno music, or use them to create outrageous clowning scenes, and the show is kind of like this high energy electric experience full of like memories that kind of constantly teeters on that kind of line between comedy and tragedy.
That's fascinating, that line between comedy and tragedy.
Yeah.
But also, interestingly, attitudes towards the passing of someone, whether it's grieving, or I'm trying to work out sometimes the percentage of grieving versus celebration, and celebration versus grieving, and how different cultures may approach it differently, or just different people approach it differently. You must have seen, Grace, across this, a huge scope of different attitudes and approaches to dealing with death.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spoke to people who are in totally different, ways of processing their grief. And we spoke to people who were a few years down the line, and we also spoke to people who their mum had passed away like 2 weeks before they did an interview with us. So we really got to see it from all different kind of perspectives. And I think what was interesting was we were very scared about making the show and scared about talking to people about grief. And I think when we started this interview process, we were very cautious, and we were worried, are we going to say the right thing? Are we going to say the wrong thing? And I think we found that because we seemed to just not talk about it at all, that it kind of like just opens the floodgates. And I think because a lot of people weren't being asked these questions, it kind of ended up that we didn't really have to say a lot in these interviews. People were just so willing to talk for ages about everything they've experienced, because it felt like they weren't getting that elsewhere. And I think a lot of like the comedy in the show does interestingly come from our kind of like this kind of like Western British way that we deal with grief, and this kind of idea of like covering it up and pretending it doesn't happen, when it's literally like the only guarantee in life and it's the most natural thing. But like the comedy comes from like pretending that it's not happening. And we spoke to someone who they kind of had their mum wasn't going to make it until Christmas, so they had Christmas early. And so we create this clown scene of this family trying to make Christmas Day in the middle of July, and it's boiling hot, and like I think that scene the most kind of like really pulls between like, is this happy, is this sad, because they're trying to have the happiest day of the year, it's Christmas Day, but you can see that they're just heartbroken. And I think that really sums up the show kind of like as a whole, and this kind of feel that grief is like a farce, and it is so extreme that I think it's sometimes so hard to describe that maybe seeing a clown show with techno music and like UV lights and just this outrageous experience, for some people might go, yeah, I do, that actually is exactly how I feel.
Wow. Grace Gallagher, co-artistic director at Ugly Bucket Theatre, is going to stay with us. Kate Ray is definitely staying with us. who's the founder of the Art of Grieving Festival. And after the news